Conversations with Bob and Sherry is where the extrovert artist meets the introvert engineer. It's where analysis intersects experience. Join us as we explore news and culture to better understand what's true and important. Sherry's not with me today, but Joy has agreed to join me for our conversation. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on board here.
Thank you.
Hey, I wanted to talk today about the thing going on in Gettysburg with the school district and the trans tennis coach.
Sure.
I think you're up to speed on that.
Yeah. So there is a coach who was, I believe, a male coach, and he coached girls tennis in Gettysburg. He then transitioned and decided that he identified as a woman, changed his name to Sasha. When he did that, he went into the girls' locker room and apparently changed in front of the girls. So for context, he is still a biological male. Regardless, he identifies as a woman, but he is a biological male, changing in the locker room with high school girls, which, if you think about it, I don't even know of female teachers who change in the locker room with the high school students. I mean, it's something that doesn't really typically happen, so it was kind of
same here. I go a ways back, but yeah, I don't recall ever having a coach or a gym teacher or anyone come in the locker room when the boys were there and take their clothes off.
Yeah. So this coach was reprimanded and told, that is not okay. You cannot do that. They did renew his contract after this happened, and he did it again. So, I mean, he broke rules again after he was told, do not do that. Do not change in front of these young women. So,
okay.
They
here's one. I think you left out a piece. So it was in March, that he was approved.
Right.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It was in the fall that this happened in the locker room. But then in March, when they presented the new hire list, Sasha's name wasn't on the list.
Yeah.
But a person named David was, which turns out that was his dead name. But the board didn't catch this, so they approved it.
Yes.
And then there was another incident.
Yes.
So they believed after the reprimand that this coach's contract would not be renewed, but yet it was renewed.
Correct.
Was it not removed, or was he supposed to be removed? Oh, he would not be rehired.
So that was what was on their agenda last night. They've tabled it. I think a few members weren't there.
But anyway, it happened again, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they were told he would not be rehired. Then it happened in April, and he went into the board found out about it because he went in the girls' restroom and one of the girls complained.
Right.
So they were told he was reprimanded a second time.
Right.
The board was told he would not be rehired, or she, or whatever. Well, then this fall, just here in August, his name was on the rehire list again.
Correct. So we actually have, and when you think about this, I, as a member of Moms for Liberty, we attend, our main goal is school boards, right? That's, we're
right.
looking to put people on school boards. We're looking to make sure that we know what is going on in the schools. The issue, and I've found this in many meetings that I've gone to with solicitors, with school board members, is that the board really, there's so much going on, and they're just like you and I. They're just volunteers. They're not being paid. They're parents. They're community members. They don't really know what's going on. I mean, you really have to be meticulous in what you're reading and poring over with contracts, with budgets. I mean, we've gone over that before.
Yes.
Right? We've discussed that.
And they're a burden to get through. These are large contracts, and budgets are huge. So yeah, it's a lot of work, and some board members may not necessarily have the expertise
right.
to read all that legalese in a contract, or to even decipher all the finance. Even someone with a financial background, if you're not from a nonprofit, a school where they utilize a lot of grants and special funding and things, that can be tough.
Yeah.
So, and there's supposed to be oversight. So how can you provide oversight if you don't understand what you're looking at?
Absolutely. And Gettysburg is fortunate to have a Moms for Liberty member on their board who did call this out and refuses to bend, and she had addressed that the issue is that, many of these people have, moral, ethical, this is wrong. Men in a women's room is wrong. There's very few people who are going to tell you that's A-okay, good stuff. And she has addressed that people are not standing up because they are afraid to say this is wrong. I mean, you're going to be labeled. You're going to be labeled a transphobe. You're going to be labeled a homophobe. You're going to be labeled any of these things discriminatory that really are not true. It's not, you can do whatever you would like in your private time, but you can't do that in the school girls' locker room. It's just not, on top of it being against the rules, on top of it being a rule that's been violated 2 times now, not just once, but twice.
So the board addressed this. This would be the 3rd time now they tried to hire him. A few weeks ago, they took a vote, and as I understand it, 2 people were absent.
Right.
1 person abstained. I think they're running for re-election or something, so they didn't want to be a part of it. And then it was split 3-3.
Yeah.
So they met again this week, I guess, to talk about. But it sounds like throughout this process, the person really pushing back on this is the solicitor. So you have the solicitor saying, if we don't bring this person back, if we fire, they just keep talking about a lawsuit.
Yes.
And, we're opening ourselves up to a discrimination lawsuit, and that has affected some of the votes. But yet it seems that the school board shares a consensus that this is a problem. This is, like you said, moral, ethical
Absolutely.
issues. And I mean, obviously they do, or they wouldn't have had him reprimanded twice.
Right.
And agreed to not bring him back. So they all sort of agree that, we don't want a male body, a man's genitalia in the girls' locker room, or in the bathroom. And that's school policy. This person broke policy twice, but yet they're afraid to not bring them back for fear of getting sued.
Yeah.
And that's from the solicitor.
Yeah, I believe she referenced Title VII. I'm not real familiar with that. And again, but I'm not a lawyer. She's not a lawyer.
Yeah.
You're sitting here trying to and that's the thing, and that's what these school board members are up against is this agenda that, the solicitors are telling you, well, just do this because they don't want to have extra work. They don't want to rewrite a policy. They pull the policies that come down from the Pennsylvania School Board Association and just say, this is what the policy is. Because who wants to rewrite it?
I mean, I think the board should get a new solicitor. Now, I don't know how easy that is. Aren't they pro bono? They don't charge, right?
I have no idea.
I think they are.
I want to say they're paid. I want to say you have contracts with these solicitors, and you can hire and fire them just like you can hire and fire your superintendent, because that chain is the board runs the show, and people don't understand that. People take orders from the superintendent or take orders from the solicitor. They're there to give you guidance, but the board is who is elected to represent the parents and the teachers, and that's the end of it. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Well, from my business background, we had corporate counsel, and then we would hire attorneys and things like that. We also had engineers and scientists. And I said this during, the pandemic, you don't put an engineer or scientist in the final decision maker of anything. I mean, these are complex decisions, and you certainly don't put the lawyer in charge. So if I'm an attorney, unless I'm going to get paid more or something, and maybe for going, I'm going to err on the side of the safest place to be as far as getting sued. So, you can't allow the solicitor to dictate every action of the board. And if the solicitor is that adamant and inflexible to recognize that there are complicated, issues here, and it's not just about the cleanest, safest legal position, then they should probably get another solicitor.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, they're fortunate to have, 3 good members who are willing to stand up for, this is not okay. This is not right. Like, I understand the legal aspects of things, and that there may be, some gray area here, but this is not gray area. This is black and white, right and wrong, and they're not bending. She's not bending.
Well, and so I read in one of the news pieces that the meeting they had this week, there were over 30 public people came in for the public comment. They actually had to move to a different venue to handle everyone. And the vast majority of them were siding with the transgender coach, saying that this is bigotry, discrimination, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I don't, as a parent, I have two children. I have a teenage son, I have a teenage daughter. Either way, I'm not okay. I don't care if it's a woman in the men's room or a man in the woman's room. And I know that it gets lost a lot with the boys. My son was in high school. There was a girl who came into the men's room. He texted me right after, hey, a girl just walked into the bathroom. So imagine being an adolescent, which is a horrible time to go through with hormones and everything else, and having to have this experience and having to do that. I mean, my daughter doesn't like to change in front of peers. It's an uncomfortable time in their life. Their bodies are changing, everything. This is the most difficult developmental stage that we're in. And now you want to throw this into it. And I'm not sure where these parents who are advocating for this and who are in favor of this, I'm not sure where their logic is coming in, I guess, would be my answer. I don't even know if that's the word.
Well, I mean, some people are just hardcore into the ideology. I call them Kool-Aid drinkers. Other people just pick the news that they choose, or they align with their political party and they go along with it and they don't really think critically about it. But if you break it down from facts and science, okay, the situation is there's a thing called gender dysphoria where people experience such psychological pain and discomfort that they actually modify their bodies in some cases to try to make that go away, to cope with that way of living. So, and there's different degrees. I mean, they do hormones, they could just dress without doing hormones, but in the most serious degree they undergo surgery to modify their bodies. And that's a situation where they're under such psychological distress that this is to help them be able to live their lives. And suicide, mental health, it's really about mental health. But we also know that there are documented there are some men who get aroused exposing themselves to women and young girls. Parading, that's an arousal. There's also known that there are some men, they used to be called cross-dressers, some of them, that will wear women's clothing because they get aroused by it. So this is a sexual arousal thing. Right. This isn't about identity and, gender dysphoria for everyone. And it could be a combination of those things. But, one of the good questions I've heard asked is, why would an adult male, whether they're trans or gay or whatever they are, why would they want to be in front of schoolgirls naked? If you have a penis, why would you want to be in front of these schoolgirls naked? I mean, that you have to question that, even if you're a trans person. Is this person going to be harassed if they go into the men's locker room in that school? I seriously doubt it. I mean, a trans person is protected in a school more than anywhere these days. So if they were to go into the boys' locker room and be mocked or made fun of, things like that, those kids would get in trouble. They have adult spaces too. They have an adult lounge, they have adult bathrooms and things like that in the schools.
That's the thing. I would question any adult feeling the need to get changed in front of a group of students. Yep. I mean, any adult. And that's if it's women and women, if it's men and men, they have their own areas. Why would you feel the need to have to be nude in front of children under the age of 18? And back to gender dysphoria, I don't have it in front of me, but what is the actual percentage of people who truly experience gender dysphoria? Because I know it's very, very small.
Yeah, I mean, it's growing by large percentages, and some say that's because of the safe environment we've created. I mean, so others among young people especially say it's because we're teaching kids at a very young age things that make them question. I mean, it's normal for a lot of people when they're young to go through some feelings of discomfort in their body. Does my body measure up?
Right.
I can attest to that as a man. I mean, in high school, there were dudes that were muscle bound, they had hair and everything, and I had a baby body. I was a late groomer. I got plenty of hair now,
Right.
but back then, I was just uncomfortable, and I remember questioning, "What's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me?" Well, if you have a society and teachers and everyone teaching you, well, that might mean that you're not really a boy. You can just fix all that by becoming a girl. I mean, what's the percentage of that? I don't know, but you cannot say that that is not a factor. That's just ridiculous.
Oh, I was watching an interview. Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember who it was with. But anyhow, there was a transgender woman or man, I don't know. I don't know how they go. There was a transgender person in the audience, and they said, I identify as a woman because that's what, people tell me. Other transgender women have told me that, and that's who I'm basing this on. Well, have you based this on what real women say? Do they see you as a woman? Because you're only identifying on what transgender women are saying, which is biological males, which you are. And what makes you feel like a woman? Well, I feel the same as they do. Like it's like being in a silo. It's just in a vacuum where everybody believes the same thing, and that's what makes them. Nobody has this individuality to say, no, I feel weird, or maybe I'm gay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like maybe I'm gay. I don't have to be dressed as a woman just because I'm a feminine man, or I don't have to be dressed as a man because I am a tomboy. It's this weird just conforming to these.
Right.
You want to talk about conformity, they all want to be unique and individual, and everybody should be able to be who they are, but they're literally conforming to these certain statuses that they want. It's just counter to everything that they say they are.
Well, and the worst part, they're believing this, and I don't know if it was John Money or the other guy, whoever coined the term gender identity. It was back in the 60s. I remember hearing about it as a kid, and they said that, the differences between boys and girls is all environmental.
Oh, yeah.
They said that if you were to have a baby born as a boy and you raised them as a girl, they would just be a girl naturally because it's all made up. In reality, that idea is a social construct, but they're going to say the whole idea. And, there's the story, his test case was a pair of twins. One of them had a botched circumcision, and so he told the family, no problem, just have him, give him the sex change and raise him as a girl. So you had one boy, one girl. I mean, the kid had a horrible life. It turns out they were allegedly abused by this guy, and the one that was raised as a girl ended up transitioning back, trying to become a man again. Ended up killing himself.
Right.
And there's plenty of people who think that was a success because they don't report the end of the story.
Right.
But anyway, that's the underlying belief that a lot of these people key up on. So you just got to ask yourself, for a male body, a penis, a person with a penis in their adult 30s, 40s, whatever, parading in the high school locker room filled with girls undressing, is that okay? No, it's not okay. I don't care what's going on up here. I don't care what your belief is about gender identity.
Right.
Why do we dismiss how this affects all those little girls, and why do some people only care about how it affects that man, that adult man? And all you need now to gain access to girl spaces in a high school, if you're a teacher or whatever, is just to, adopt a female identity and start dressing like one. It doesn't matter if you look good at it or anything. Just put on the dress, say I'm a female, and you can do that. Or if you're a prisoner in prison, in a male prison, you want to go to a female prison. I mean, it's just absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. It's
And I like you said, I think most people understand this, and they know that they don't want their daughter exposed to it. But, there's a lot of social pressure. People are afraid. They're afraid to be, the vast majority of the parents who came out were in favor of the trans person, so that's going to put a lot of pressure on these board members who voted against it.
I've said it time and again. I work the polls. I meet Democrats. I meet Republicans in my community, You don't know what everyone is, and it doesn't matter, because people have come up to me, and you find when you have conversations, that there are no, grandfathers, fathers, no rational person wants a grown man in the bathroom with their daughter. None. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on. It doesn't matter what they're affiliated with. Rational people know this is wrong. There's more rational people, but there's, it's the loud, screaming group that says this is wrong, and you're going to be outcast. The people just, keep quiet and don't say anything, and that's not okay. It's
right.
Putting people in danger to avoid having someone call you a name isn't okay, and like I said, they are grateful that they have these members who are standing firm and saying,
yep,
this is not okay. I will not bend. I will not break. These are the values. These are the morals. This is right and wrong. We're not changing that. You don't change right from wrong. It's either right or wrong, and that's it.
Well, I've been reading more about different issues. This is one that I tend to deep dive. And I believe what Moms for Liberty is doing, and others like Gays Against Groomers or Fight, I believe they're having an impact. But I don't think you'll ever get credit for it. Because I think what's starting to happen is you're seeing a silent shift. The trend based on WPATH standards and things was to rush people, gender affirming care literally came to mean you don't question someone. Right. So all the guardrails that they talk about, even among young children, a lot of the guardrails and things were being taken down. And it was, you walk in, it was on demand, give me hormones, give me whatever I asked for, because the same kind of political pressure to not do so made the doctor, the medical people bigots, and they wanted to see people die. So that's where we were going. But I'm seeing more and more now, because the response to the challenges are, no, we don't do, hormones for kids under 18, no sex, surgeries or anything. Yet there's a whole bunch of detransitioners out there who tell their story about it happened to them and they regret it. So they pretend like it's always been that way. But I'm seeing in the gender clinics, the medical, everywhere, they're going back towards, psychological evaluation, long-term validation of this gender dysphoria. So again, I think exposing it is having an impact, but I don't know that anyone's ever going to come out and say, boy, they really saved the day, those Moms for Liberty types. But you are.
I talk to professionals. I talk to, psychologists and people like that. And I truly want to understand it, right? Like, I want to understand what is going on and who is doing this. Like, I read stories. I'm in groups. I'm in, groups of people with transgender children. Oh, my 4-year-old wants to identify as a boy, so I'm going to send them to school as a boy, and we're going to do all this, and we're so excited. It's like Christmas morning. It's like Christmas morning that your child wants to be something else. Who's running the show here? Now, I did talk.
You know someone like that?
I don't know anyone personally. I mean,
You've seen cases of it. I have too. Yeah.
I've listened to these. I'm in these groups, and I talked to a woman at the summit, and she said, my son, I loved How to Train Your Dragon. Loved it. It was his favorite movie. He was so into it. And he wanted to be named whatever the dragon is. I didn't see it. She said, so we called him that. Did we get him surgery to become a dragon? It's like an episode of South Park, where people just, if you've ever watched South Park, they did this. He wanted to be a dolphin, so he got a fin put on him and the flippers. And who does that, right? Like, you can't do that. The other one wanted to be a black basketball player because he wanted to be taller, so they made him black and his knees blew out. I mean, it was just, it's like living in an episode of South Park. It's that bizarre. They
broke his legs and extended him, made him taller and black because he was a short white kid, and the kids that were good were black and tall. But then in the end, when he actually went in to play basketball, his body basically fell apart. And the doctor's like, no, you can't actually use your body like that. We can make you look like it. That's about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, and, another thing at Summit, Billboard Chris is I didn't know anything about him. I think he's fantastic. He's so motivating, right? And he just walks around the country with this message that, you don't put kids on puberty blockers, and you don't give these kids these drugs, because these drugs have real consequence, real effects. And in his session, it was, you didn't know whether to be angry or hysterical crying or motivate. I mean, you just went through the whole gamut of emotions, because he's showing 15-year-olds who have detransitioned and who truly had a mental illness. You know, she was bipolar, or she was, you know, had any number of things, and she was uncomfortable with her mind. They said, oh, well, you just identify as a man. That's fine. We'll just, you know, we'll give you surgeries and give you top surgery. She will never be able to have children. She will never, you know, be normal. She's 15. You know, you're like, she's 15 years old and she's crying and sobbing. I didn't know this was going to be this way, and I didn't want this, and I didn't have any idea what the consequences of this would be. And they're just doing it. You know, I don't care what they say they're doing. They're obviously doing it, right? We have people who have transitioned. So who is allowing this? Who is saying this is what you need to do? My kids are perfect. I have 2. Flaws and all, my children are the absolute most perfect thing from top to bottom, head to toe, inside and outside. I would never want to change my children for anything. They're perfect. So who's telling their kids they're not perfect? You were born as you are meant to be, and you're perfect just as you are. That's the message people should be telling all kids, right? Everything. You know, any shortcomings, your shortcomings are your positives in some way. Maybe it's not right now. Maybe it's not apparent to you right now. But one day, that's going to be what makes you. And they're missing the point. They're missing it. It's just, let's do a quick fix, change it, and everything will be fine. And it's not. It's not the way it is.
No. Well said. So, have you been following the Trump indictment?
You know what? It changes every day, Bob.
Which one, right?
It's a new thing every day. And I'm like, you know what my issue is? Is what's going to happen? You know, it's my thing is always, my husband turns on the news and he's like, oh, did you see this? And I'm like, who's doing anything about it? Is anyone doing anything? Because if they're not doing anything, I don't even care, because it's just going to be something new tomorrow. So, you know, he has like 400 different charges against him, right? What count?
I forget how many charges, but you know, the unique thing about Georgia is it's the RICO. Right. So these were racketeering laws for gangsters, and what it's supposed to be is, so in the organized crime, the higher ups didn't actually do the crimes, but they orchestrated it and ordered it, and you know, so you couldn't ever prosecute the higher ups. The underlings would actually do the stealing, the assaults, the murders, whatever. And, you know, they could get arrested and charged with that crime, but you could never charge the people who actually are running the enterprise and giving the orders and things like that. So that's what RICO did. It said if you can prove that there's a criminal enterprise that this person is involved in, then even though they didn't actually do a crime themselves, they're guilty under this RICO. It combines criminal penalties with civil penalties. So, like, if you know, guy's proven to be a mob boss and he owns properties and things, you can seize his properties. It makes it easier to charge these folks, and it well, I mean, you know, that's really it. So, but one of the things, apparently in Georgia, the standard for charging RICO is actually even lower than the federal.
Oh, wow.
But so the federal government, federal prosecutors are required to ask permission before using RICO. Department of Justice guidance mandates no RICO criminal indictment or information or civil complaint shall be filed, and no civil investigation demand shall be issued without prior approval of the criminal division. They said that in their documents, they say utilization of the RICO statute more so than most other federal criminal sanctions requires particularly careful and reasoned application. And the DOJ higher-ups warn they will not approve imaginative prosecutions under RICO, which are far afield from the congressional purpose of the RICO statute. So the federal government acknowledges that this can be abused. Right. Well, this woman, what's her name, Fannie, she brags that she has brought more RICO cases in the last 18 to 20 months in Georgia than what they've done in 10 years.
Who's not overseeing this? And here's my thing. I did see that they were looking to indict her, right? Is that correct? That the Republicans,
I don't know. The Republicans?
That they were looking to indict her because she's doing this. And my question was, How did she get away with doing this in the first place? Why are we coming in late to the game to say, wait, stop? Why is this being allowed to go on at all? I mean, how is that not an abuse of power?
Well, I've decided that these prosecutors, like a lot of people who were in the Trump White House, you remember there were so many whistleblowers, people that left Trump and then wrote a book and made a ton of money. I mean, you can really elevate yourself. You can go on, end up on CNN as a contributor making millions of dollars a year just to come in and bash Trump.
Absolutely.
So, for these prosecutors in New York and now in Georgia, nobody ever heard of them before if you didn't live. Alvin Bragg and Fannie Richards are now national names. So there's a lot of rewards just for bringing the charges. Where in the past, if you brought charges that were, found to be somewhat frivolous or, didn't work, that would reflect badly on you. It's like just charging Trump is all benefit to these people. There's no downside whatsoever. They're never held accountable by the media. They know it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because RICO was made just for the mob. I mean, they did that specifically for the mob because they couldn't get them.
Well, Fannie Willis, one of her cases she prosecuted under RICO was a, quote, ring of school teachers, public school teachers, for inflating student grades. So apparently school teachers were inflating grades. I don't know why. I didn't drill down into it, maybe to help move the kids out of their classroom or whatever. But she used RICO statutes to convict 11 of the 12 educators. So she put 12 of these people on trial, and 11 were convicted of RICO. She also used it against a rapper, Young Thug, who she accused of leading a criminal operation. So teachers elevating grades was prosecuted under RICO by this Fannie Willis.
Well, what's funny about that is that now they're doing this equity grading where you don't even have to do your homework.
Right.
Or pass tests, and they'll pass you because it's not fair. It's like a contradiction of what they're even doing. You can't elevate their grades, but yet now you can't grade them either. So where do even teachers, how are teachers not outraged at this point? Where are they stepping up and saying, you guys are making this really hard? Like, I did not go to school to be a counselor. I did not go to school to fight this. I just want to teach math and go home.
Well, I think some of the people who have analyzed this said, how are they going to prove this? That it has to go to Trump's intent, what he was thinking at the time. And, he has never wavered in his conviction that the election was stolen. So that's his best defense. I mean, and as far, they say they named a couple of people who claimed they told Trump that there was nothing here, that, there's no basis for this. But he had other people telling him to keep going, like Giuliani.
Right.
So, and since when does Trump take advice? So all he has to do is point to all the news stories written about him to say, how can you say this guy was intentionally trying to overthrow the government processes and things like that? Even asking Pence to not certify, you can point back to things that have been done in the past. So there are some precedent and things like that. These are not necessarily unprecedented. Maybe to the degree, but definitely the way they've been reported. But I don't think it's going to, I don't think they have a case that they can go against. And it doesn't matter, though. She's getting her day in the sun. It's going to help her political career. And, there's nothing but accolades and rewards for going after Trump.
Yeah. I know. He should charge people. Like, if you use my name, you have to pay me. It's like a copyright, right?
Yeah.
At this point, I mean,
that's right. They're benefiting off his name.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It's crazy. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre to me, and I don't know how they're getting away with it. That's where my concern is. I mean, and that's where everybody's concern should be. Who just gets to throw these things out? If it can happen to them, it can happen to you, right? If it can happen to someone with millions of dollars, with the best lawyers money can buy, and they can stick it to them for the dumbest things, what makes you think it can't happen to you?
Well, we have the Constitution, and we have our separation of powers, so that's cast in stone. But there's a very critical piece here, and that is the freedom of the press. So when they set this country up, in order for the people to consent, in order for the power to reside in the people, they have to be accurately informed. They have to know what's going on. They have to have objective information. And all the news, the online stuff, and especially the broadcast stuff, it's all sensationalized entertainment. And there's not a journalistic standard here at all. So people don't honestly know what's going on.
When I was a senior in high school and I took a journalism class, we had to write a report. We had to write a research report, but you had to see your side. You had to write about the opposite side and then state why you chose your side, right? So for, against, and then why you chose the side you did. And people aren't doing that. People don't see the other side. They're not even taking the time to know that there is another side. I tell my kids all the time, there's 3 sides of the story: mine, yours, and the truth. Somewhere in the middle there, because both of us are going to be skewed, and that's human nature. There's no way around that. There's no way that I can tell you a story and I'm right and I'm always right, and that's the way it is because I'm biased towards myself. Of course I don't want to see myself as wrong. Who would? And people are not looking for any articles I cite with people. I find the other side and make sure that, somewhere in the middle is the truth, right? The left is not right, the right is not right. There's a fine line in the middle there, and that's what people are not searching for. They're just going with what they see, and the news is spot on to say whatever they want, throw it out, and see what sticks. When there were riots out here, when George Floyd happened, we had a protest. There was a tweet that went out from the news, from KDKA or WTAE, and it was a picture of burning buildings and cars overturned, and my husband called me hysterical, because we were home. I was home with kids, and we're maybe a mile away from where this protest was taking place, and he said, "Oh my God, I saw this tweet. Someone showed me what's going on, like everything's burning." And I'm like, that's not true. Now, the news did go back onto their tweet and say, oh, that image was from, somewhere else, from Minnesota last year with the burning buildings. But at that point, it doesn't matter. People have seen it. They're not going back to verify. They're not going back to check and see if the news did it right. They're seeing it and running with it and causing mass hysteria.
Yeah, well, people increasingly, I think now more than ever, are led by their emotions. Oh, yeah. And, so they go with whatever feels right, and then they think about it later. So your reason, you got to look at a good example would be the Blind Side thing. Have you followed this story with Michael Oher and the Tuohys?
A little bit.
Somewhat.
We went back and forth on this, and I'm kind of like, well, why is he just now coming out about it?
Right.
How did you not know they made money, over the past 15 years? People want Sandra Bullock to give her Oscar back for something that had nothing to do with her. Like, some of it's a little ridiculous. I'm kind of trying, because again, there's his side and their side, and somewhere in the middle, there's a meeting.
Well, it's an emotional story. So whatever you read first, you tend to lean, and then we all have our biases. But I learned from being on 2 juries. I was in a criminal trial and a civil trial, and they were pretty close together. When one side presents their case first, by the time they rest, you in your mind think, this is cut and dry. I know what's going on here. I can give my verdict right now. I can vote right. I know everything that's going on. I'm so confident. But then when the other side starts to talk, it's like, oh no. Now it's like chipping away at all that. And now you end up conflicted. And they do a great job of choosing the jury based on people's background and speculating on their biases, because in both cases, when the jury went in to deliberate, it was split right down the middle.
Yeah.
And, we had to negotiate.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally what we did in each case. We negotiated.
It's hard. I mean, human nature is a tricky thing. It's just a very difficult, I don't know.
I'm glad so far nobody's brought up the race part of this. Maybe some commentaries have, I don't know. But, if I think about, you have kids. One thing that I've learned going through raising them to adulthood is at some point they move out, they start to build their own lives, and it's different. It's like they're separate people. They start to change the way they think about things. And, where you used to be like in total sync with your kids, whether you agreed with them or not, you knew everything that was going on. And soon after they leave, it's like, it's kind of weird,
Yeah. Right.
And so you love when they come back. But, when I look at Michael Oher's life, I mean, he spent no more than 2 years. It was more than a year, but no more than 2 years with the Tuohys. And both by the testimony of both sides and everything that's been written, it was a loving family connection. But he had lived something like 16 years before that in and out of different homes and things like that. And then he went off to college. So, he was really a member of that household for less than 2 years.
Yeah.
It was definitely more than one. I don't know the exact time frame. So, now he's 7 years through the NFL. He's retired years ago, So, I mean, it just makes me wonder if that parent bond thing has kind of faded. And, he's always been bothered by the fact that the movie portrayed him as not understanding football. The way the movie was, he was just this big kid with talent, but he didn't know anything about football, and the Tuohys basically taught him football.
Okay.
Them and the coaches. And I remember when the movie first came out, he came out and said that bothered him. He goes, I knew a lot about football, and, because I had been playing football since I was a little kid. It wasn't like that at all. And then he even wrote a book where he talked about that. Well, now more recently, he's kind of changed it a little bit where he said the movie portrayed him as stupid.
Okay.
And he said, I'm not stupid. So it seems like that's kind of bothered him.
Right.
But, and he's making the assumption that the Tuohys made a lot of money off the movie because the movie grossed $330 million. But, they claim they didn't, and whatever they made, they shared it equally, including with him. He wouldn't accept the money, they said, so they put it in a trust fund for his kids.
Okay.
And, his initial claim was they lied to him. Now, this is a problem I have with, like, Hollywood and the whole deal. They presented it in the book and then definitely in the movie as adoption.
Okay.
When in reality, it was a conservatorship.
Right. And I saw that the attorney who represented him was a friend of theirs. So, my thing is, well, how do you not know what you're signing? He was an adult when he signed it, and you can't legally adopt someone who's an adult. So that would hurt you.
Apparently, other lawyers have weighed in and said you could.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that's the advice that the Tuohys got from their attorney. Just like, this solicitor in Gettysburg, not all attorneys are going to take the same position.
Right.
But Michael Oher wrote a book in 2010, 2011, and in the book, he called it a conservatorship. It's written in his own book. So he knew the word.
Right.
If now is he saying he didn't know what it really meant, I mean, it almost seems like some people got to him. I don't know, maybe he's in financial. He should be set financially, and so should the family. They sold their restaurant business for like $200 million. I don't know how much of that they cleared, but it's got to be in the tens of millions.
Yeah.
He was a first-round draft pick, played 7 years in the NFL, so he had to make tens of millions.
Right.
So I don't know what this is about. It shouldn't be about money, but they claim that before they went public, they went to his lawyer approached the family and said, for $15 million, we won't go public with this.
Yep. I saw the shakedown. And I know that his biological mother was in the original meeting. I think I read that too, that she was in the meeting when he signed.
She had to sign off on the conservatorship, or if it had been an adoption, she would have had to agree to either one.
Okay.
Because she was alive.
Yeah. Which is interesting because he was an adult. I mean, he was 18.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting concept. But again, like I said, they had their family friend representing him as an attorney. So
yep.
You're kind of, that's where facts start come to play, because you read it and you're like, oh, well, he comes out and he says they did this and they did that. And you're like, oh, they're horrible people. And then they come out and say, oh, well, it like goes back and forth. It ebbs and flows. Which way do you go? And I think that it's, but then I don't know, is this a case that should be played out in public view? Is that, and then why? And then I start to question that. Why
Right.
is it in public view? Who cares about the Tuohys? I don't care about the Tuohys. I don't care about Michael Tuohy. I don't care that what I mean? Like, do you really want, it's like Antonio Brown, right? You're watching this whole saga play out, and it's like, is this really something that we should be seeing? Is this not your private life? Do you want this to be seen? Why? And then why?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've gone through that. I've asked for Michael and the Tuohys, what would be their motives? Like,
Right.
what would be their motive for taking advantage and lying to him and things like that? I don't think it's money, because they have plenty of money. People are fanatics about their football teams, and he was considered a booster for Mississippi. I don't know if that meant he was actually giving money, or because he was a former player, he fell under the booster rules. So having another kid living in his household, that could be seen as a violation of recruiting rules under the NCAA. So he could not go to Mississippi if unless he was part of the family, either through adoption or conservatorship. So they openly said that. They went to Michael. They said, look, if you think you might want to go to Mississippi, then we need to do something to make you part of this family legally. Otherwise, they won't take you because it violates NCAA rules.
Okay.
Now, another piece of this, he lived with several other families before the Tuohys. I guess he would live with them and maybe end up on the street, but somehow this Christian school to which all these families belonged discovered him and brought him in. So, did they want him because he would help their football team,
Right.
which they had a football team? So, there's definitely a piece of this where, these people wanted to help their own football teams.
Right.
And the Tuohys were the final ones that brought him in. And from what I heard, he hasn't talked about any of the other families. I don't know if they were foster, or what, but he would live with other families affiliated with kids in the school, I guess, so he could play football there. So in a sense, they were kind of taking advantage of him, but
Right.
the Tuohys were the ones that brought him in, I guess, full time.
Okay. It's an interesting, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Right. But what about him? I mean, unless he did some bad investments and lost money, who knows? I mean, does he have people around him that, they want to use this to profit? Is it a cultural, white people taking advantage, rich white people taking advantage of the poor black kids, and they're trying to play that angle? I don't know. I mean, I know that he feels like he got the shaft on that movie. And maybe, people around him have told him, hey, this is your chance to get your piece.
Yeah.
You become the famous hero instead of the dumb black kid that they rescued.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just sad, though, and it should remind all of us to be very careful of when you watch movies, you get entertained and everything, but you got to separate that from reality, because it's not reality what you see.
And it's not, and that's with, that's the same thing is with, what's the movie about the child trafficking?
Oh, yeah, Sound of Freedom.
Okay, same concept, right? I went to the movie, saw it, had heard about it, very emotional movie. People left because they were upset. And then everybody says, well, it's not true. No, and he didn't really do that. And I said, it's still a movie, right?
Right.
You have to take that into account. This is still a movie. It's still for your, maybe not entertainment, but entertainment.
It is.
Since that's what it is, right? You might not be laughing entertained. People can take that, but
Right.
It's a movie. They are trying to make money. They're trying to entertain you.
Yes.
You have to add, subtract, embellish,
Yep.
and everybody should know that. I mean, anything that's based on a true story is based on it. It doesn't mean
Yep.
word for word it happened. It's great when it does, and it's great when they have a story that's good enough that you don't have to change it, but you do have to change it. And people calling for Sandra Bullock should give that back. Like, it was a story. It was just a nice story. And at the time of the movie, and I do remember the movie coming out, it was a nice story. It made people feel good, and it was
Yep.
happy. And that's what movies are supposed to do. You want the happy ending. That's fairy tales,
Well,
right?
I mean, the main facts of the movie are true.
Right.
What they report, that family, those kids, that all happened. But part of what Hollywood has a recipe for TV shows and movies. That certain things are always present. There always has to be, a good guy and a bad guy. There's a point where they have a crisis. I want to say existential crisis, but there's another word for it, like crisis of the night or something like that. So if once you learn this formula that they use, if you watch movies, you see this repeating sometime multiple times in a movie. So like the scene where there's a scene where the guy living in the jungle, went in to molest a little girl,
Right.
and he was hiding there, and he jumped out and fought him and stabbed him. I was watching it thinking, well, that was entertaining, but I don't know if it actually went down that way.
Right.
It could have very well been that he just went, got her out of her cabin, and they ran away. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's not exciting. That's not Hollywood. Oh no, now he's going to get caught. Now he's got to fight this guy. And there were two instances where there was an instance earlier where he got in front of a guy to stop him from molesting a little boy, and he was a tough guy, gangster type, and that almost escalated into a conflict. I don't know that ever happened.
Right.
So the basic facts of that the child trafficking exists and how it operates, and those children and their father, those are all true.
Right.
And so some little details are embellished, but so what's funny to me, or I think striking to me, is how people want to completely dismiss this out of their political leanings. They want to completely ignore the issue of child sex trafficking, to distance themselves from the Q conspiracy or something like that. I mean, come on. You don't care about children being kidnapped, even though the data is out there. We know that this really happens, but they want to pretend it doesn't because they don't. It's somehow because that might get affiliated with people. We don't want to agree on anything with people that might be associated with QAnon. That's kind of the
argued with
attitude.
people about this, and I said, you know what? I don't care if the whole movie's fake. I don't care if the whole thing was embellished. At the end of the day, there is a purpose, right? And the point of it is to bring attention to this. And if you don't see there's something wrong, I can't help you. I mean, I don't know where you got lost in your moral compass, but I can't help you.
Now, they certainly have the good people, bad people thing really mixed up. I mean, that's what the politics are, right? You're the good people. We're fighting those bad conspiracy theorists and those extreme mobs for liberty. And, they make you guys out to be the bad guys, and so they can feel good to be the good people. But now they're doing it, and they're defending sex trafficking, or at least ignoring child sex trafficking. I mean, that's you're not on the right side if you're doing that.
No, and honestly, I would rather be wrong if it was, if the end result was the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll be wrong. I'll be wrong all day. I'll admit that I'm wrong, and I'll acknowledge it, and I'll tell you I am sorry, but honestly, I didn't believe in so many things. And then, I'm like, oh, my friends are conspiracy theorists. They're nuts. And you know what happened, Bob? They started being right. And you're really losing it. Like, what is happening? I would rather be wrong than be right with so much of this. And it's crazy.
I agree. Well, Sherry and I interviewed a gentleman who's head of a local group called the Oher Project, and they do the investigations. They recognize that law enforcement doesn't have all the resources to do these early investigations. Some of the federal enforcement does it with the, they go online and pose as children and things like that, and then they trap these guys. But the Oher Project is basically doing that. They spend they're all ex-law enforcement, military, tech people, and they scour the dark web and all these seedy places, and they look, and if they can build evidence against these people, they present it to the police, so the police can actually go in and do the raids and make the arrest.
Yeah.
And it's a great interview. I broke it up into multiple shorts so that people can see the important pieces without watching the whole thing. But he really explains how children on gaming sites and whatnot get lured into this, and how the tactics that these people use. And I think there's an important thing for people to be aware of. I mean, he
Yeah.
would actually do they do public presentations. They go into schools to try to raise awareness and teach kids and parents what to look out for. I'm sure they would do something for Moms for Liberty if you wanted.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's, I was just reading something from the Moms for Liberty member in Gettysburg, actually, about, the things that you have to, social media and things to talk to your kids about, and guidance from the, maybe the FTIC, Federal Trade, something like that. But, guidance for how to talk to your kids and what to be aware of and what to look out for. I mean,
Yep.
there's so many apps. There's so many different ways to get to these kids now, and
Yep.
so many ways to avoid getting caught, and it's scary.
Well, they basically play the long game. So, as parents, you tell your kids, watch out for this, that, and the other thing. But these people are so subtle, and they take their time. They'll engage with the kids. They'll play the games. They'll do whatever. And they'll look for these little bits of information. They don't ask for big information. What's your address? Tell me where you live.
Right.
They try to get these kids going back and forth. If they find out that they're frustrated or, they're angry at their sister or whatever, they'll then get them to talk a little bit about their sister. Maybe something's going on with their parents. They'll go, well, what about your... So they learn little things like where the sister goes to school. They learn, what the parents do for a living and things like that. And they build all this, and then there comes a day where they release it on the kid. They basically got them trapped.
Yeah.
A lot of cases for, I guess for the older kids especially, but they'll convince them, like boys, to share nude photos. So, an old guy can give a teenage boy these naked photos of some young girl and say that's her.
Right.
And then they say, oh, why don't you I'll send you another one. I'll send you another one. And then they get them, just send me something, anything. And then they'll tell then once they have it, that's their leverage. So they'll do it without that or with that. They'll say, hey, I have these pictures and your parents and everybody in your school is going to see them if you don't do what I tell you. Or I know where your sister goes to school and I know where your mother works, and I'm gonna hurt them if you don't do what I tell you. So they trap the kid, and again, that takes months sometimes for them to extract all this information. They just get little bits at a time. They're really good at this.
My son's on Snapchat. Funny story.
What's that?
My son's on Snapchat. Gets a snap from someone, adds them. He sends his face, just his face. He gets a snap right back that has split screen, his face, and from the waist down, a nude man. My son loses his mind, calls me upstairs, what's going on? They said that they were going to send it to everybody if he didn't send them, $500, right? It's sextortion is what it's called. That's the word for it. And I told him, I said, listen, anybody who knows you knows that you would never do this, that he's just not that type of person to be sending nudes out of himself, right? And he was very, he's a teenager. I mean, this is the worst.
Right.
What kind of people are doing this to people? I can't comprehend. But, it was fine. It ended up being okay. But I explained to him, and we made light of it in the house. We kind of said this is not the worst thing in the world. You could be in the principal's office with this picture and me and have to show this picture and discuss, it could be way more embarrassing than it is. But, at the end of the day, there are kids who are out there killing themselves because this is happening.
Yeah.
And, it's not the end of the world.
Well, asking for money's the better scenario, because what the other ones try to do is they say, you have to meet me. If you don't come and meet me at this place and this time, this is what I'm going to do with this information I have.
Even if they get 10 kids and they try to get anything from any of them, they're still making money, and it's minimal effort. It's minimal to make these kids do this. So it's awful.
Yep. All right. Well, so check out the Acervo project on our page. And Joy, I really appreciate you bailing me out here and coming out.
It's always fun to talk to you, Bob.
All right. Anything else you'd like to throw in, or?
We have some great stuff coming up from Moms for Liberty. We're going to try and get James Lindsay, so we're hoping to kind of make that solid and get things firmed up for that, and hope that people can come out and see him. He's fantastic. He's wonderful. Awesome. We'd love to get Billboard Chris. We're going to work on that one too, but it's a little tricky. It's getting hard. So these people, as we kind of come back to the right side of the world here, and everything straightens out. They're a little more in demand. They're not so hated, so it's a little harder to get.
Oh, and I don't know if I said it already, but Joy agreed to do this on like zero notice. She had no. I'm like, can you come on and do a podcast with me?
I love to
I
talk, Bob.
really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.